Hello everybody, my name is Grandmaster Jesse Kraai, and today we are talking about what it takes to reach 1200chess.com. Now, I think a lot of people think about the numbers 1000 and 2000 as being the significant benchmarks in somebody's chess development. But for me, 1200 is a very interesting spot. Now, first, I just want to share 1200 for us in the dojo is like the 900 to 1000 cohort, and then Lead Chess 1600. And it's the very significant benchmark for me because it's the cohort where I notice games not being decided all the time by somebody hanging their pieces. So you start really seeing at this, as the competition amps up here, that people are no longer hanging their pieces, and therefore it's not really that which is deciding all the games, okay? So for example, to make 1100, I said that 65% of the whole quest was getting a grip on the board. Now that drops dramatically to 50%. People will still be hanging stuff, but it's just not gonna happen nearly as much. Then we have time usage. We'll talk about what that means. Time on the clock. Development, people still need to learn how to develop their pieces at this stage of their chess career. And now we have calculation, 15%. And what I mean by that is different really than a grip on the board. Calculation is not just a hanging piece. It's not just, like with the grip, you're seeing which squares control which. Calculation is like, I'm thinking a little bit, and I really have to sit there and think about what a sequence would entail, right? What are the ramifications? It's kind of one of the beauties of chess. And it's not really possible to have that ability until you get a grip on the board. In any case, we're going to see some games here at this level where calculation definitely plays a role. And then finally, at 5%, I have understanding, chess understanding. Now you could say, Jesse, of course chess understanding was important before this. But what I'm saying is not that it wasn't important, but just that games weren't decided by it, okay? So as you go up the ladder, chess understanding will become more and more important, right? What do I do in certain kinds of situations? And that will be, your opponents will be strong enough that if you make a strategic mistake, they will exploit you. At this level, it's still just 5%. It's not the deciding factor, but I just want to introduce it as something for us to think about. A very useful metaphor, I think, is to say that chess is a three-dimensional game with material being the first dimension. And that, when you think about it, the quest to get to 1200chess.com is mostly about mastering that material dimension. Second dimension is time. And in the opening in particular, we think of time with development. We're going to see it in the middle game and the end game too. And then finally, the hardest to understand, the third dimension, is quality of position, right? Okay, so like I do in all these videos, I want to take a look at a player who is struggling to reach the barrier that we're looking to examine, okay? So this is the Iceman. Iceman's been with the dojo for a while. He's been doing great. And we can see that with his ratings, he has gained a number of points. He's graduated. He's doing a lot of work. And something I just want to say, I'm an older dude too. He's in his mid-50s. I'm getting there. And it's harder. It's harder. And one of the things that the dojos were constantly thinking about people's progress and how do we help them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we look at his training plan. Okay, so at the dojo, you can pin some tasks, and here you can see he's pinned some tasks, some of which are dojo tasks, like the annotate classical games and play the games, but he's also added some things like this Yusupov book that aren't in the program, which is fine. And it really relates actually to a problem that we have, namely when we go to his tactics, he's already done so much of the tactics. And you see like the mate in twos, he's gone well beyond what we tell people in the program to do. And the issue is when you get to a plateau, right? it's going to be really hard to crack. And so profiles like this turn us on at the dojo to be like, wait a second, wait a second, we got to rethink about what it takes for somebody to make it. Also, notice he's body slammed the benchmarks of the puzzle rush and the survival. So the tactics aren't necessarily his problem, right? And again, tactics are mostly at this level related to developing a grip on the board. We will see some calculation, but even doing some harder calculation will get you that grip. What's controlling what on the board? Okay, so middle games and strategy, he's done all this great stuff. He's doing some extra stuff too. If you don't have to be in the program. I'll show you what we got here. Then he's done all of these algorithms. Great. This is a big one, for example, at this cohort where you need to really drill that one down. Okay, number 4 is this bad boy. That's mostly to develop a grip, though someday you will get that too. And the opening is important. We're saying you shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't do anything. All right? Okay. So what I want to do now is take a look at a game the Iceman's played and think about why it's so much more competitive now getting to 1200 than it was before. Okay. So in this game, actually, first I'm going to show the time graph. Both players played really well in terms of their time. It's a 60 plus 30. This is in a dojo round robin. I actually know his opponent, Andrew. Let's start it here. And Andrew is really working on his chess as well. He's a higher rated player. And, we're going to see some element. We're going to talk a little bit what that discrepancy is between the two levels of player. Okay, so next we'll go to the game. And fine. Now I think the Iceman is mostly following our advice and just developing, and that should serve him well. Now, D3, white can do a variety of things. Back in the day, they always castled. Nowadays, the slow approach is kind of favored. Now, Andrew is at a slightly higher cohort in the dojo. He's in the 12 to 13, and there we allow people to do some opening work, and I know this is an opening he's been working on. One of the things about working on an opening, as we'll see, is has less to do with memorizing lines and more about understanding the dynamics and tactics of the position, especially in a slow-ish opening like this. Okay, so now, our first key mistake, which has to do with grip. A6, really just blundering the pawn on E5. Now, I want to stress that when people learn openings, they often can trick themselves because they'll be like, oh, I remember this kind of thing. Now, A6 is the right move if white had castled. That's a, big opening preparation thing, because there, if white had castled, the pawn on E4 would be hanging. Here, it's not hanging. Now, even though I don't think the Iceman has studied this opening, I think he played it at A6 because he's seen it in some games, right? And likewise, Andrew, 5 seconds played, boom. And why did Andrew do it? Because Andrew is also used to going back here. He's trained himself. He can just take on C6 and then take on E5. Okay. So black can do a variety of things. Bishop C5, fine. Castles, D6, fine. We're developing. We're going to be okay. C3. Okay, so you can see Andrew's playing this setup. Now, C3 is not necessarily a loss of time because it does a lot of things. And one of them is it really kills the knight's prospects. In addition, maybe we'll play D4 someday. Maybe we'd like the bishop to go back. So not a bad move. And now he plays B5. Okay, I guess I would have preferred castle, but that's okay. Bishop C2, bishop B3 was fine too. And now bishop G4, and he doesn't like this move. And he's so traumatized by what has happened that he's going to say, oh, I should have played H6. Maybe H6, it's a very fancy move to play. But one of the things from our perspective of this level is bishop G4 is a developing move, and therefore it really shouldn't be seen as all that bad, even if some GM like me tells you it's not the most accurate. Okay, so here we're going to come to a moment where positional understanding is important, but I'll let you judge whether this was actually a deciding factor in the game in terms of what actually decided the game. Quick time out here. Did you know that the dojo is an incredible site with tactics, a database, a community of people trying to improve, a training program? All of this is going on at our site, so go check it out. ChessDojo.club. Hit the link in the description. Typically, what Fisher taught us in the ancients was that when they pin you like this, your aspiration is to do this kind of long-winded thing and then go pop, pop, pop. And the knight will be very useful on g3 and it'll whack this bishop. Furthermore, a grief that we'll see from both sides is it's not clear you want to get your bishop locked in on g6, because it's not very active there, okay? We're going to come back to that idea in a second. So rook e1, natural enough, castles. And now Andrew thinks for a long time and plays bishop g5. Interestingly, I'm doing a game annotation workshop with Andrew, and Andrew, of his own volition, I didn't say anything about it. I hadn't even looked at this game when we were doing the workshop, said, oh, in a previous game, I played bishop g5, and now I know about this plan of knight d2, knight f1. It's a great example of going over your games and then learning some interesting strategy. Now, for me, I want to say, as a player, bishop g5 and bishop g4 feel fairly normal. But I remember a conversation I had with some e4 players long ago, and they were like, yeah, GMs basically never play bishop g5. And I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule, but the point is that now on bishop g5, when I whack you, do you want to go here? Because if you do, I'm going to whack you again, and then maybe your bishop's a little bit unhappy there. I think both of these players said to themselves, oh, well, I'm uncomfortable with h6, g5, because that weakens my kingside position. It does, but then the bishop's poor on g3. So you can see that's an example of positional understanding. Now, Black really kind of loses his mind here and plays a5. It doesn't do anything, right? So really it's a loss of tempo, but it also expresses that he doesn't know what to do. This bishop g5 thing is terrifying him, and he's not ready to play h6, g5. Okay, so it doesn't really do anything, the move a5. White develops natural. Maybe h3, g4 is something White should have considered, with the same idea of putting the bishop on g6 and saying, hey, you're kind of a chump there, right? Okay. Now Black plays h6. Now, if you're going to do it, you might as well have done it the move before, because White just got a big developing move and a5 didn't do anything for you. Okay. So he calls this equal. Interesting. Maybe it's equal. Bishop g3. And now I think this is fine, knight h5. Okay. So this is a very hot position, and it's a little bit hard to know exactly what White should do here. What White does do, knight f1, isn't great, because that could have allowed Black to play queen f6. And there's a famous game, Winter versus Capablanca, where Capablanca doubles these pawns and then says, oh, I'm just going to leave your bishop there forever, and then it's dead. So once you double the pawns, you can then see, oh, how is the bishop even going to get out? But even if you don't double the pawns, you can also see, oh, it's still kind of hard for that bishop to get out and do something. So that's an example of positional understanding that comes from knowing a game like Winter versus Capablanca. So Black doesn't know what to do and plays knight e7. And this is funky for a variety of reasons. One of them is we're giving this opportunity. Also, it's not clear quite what it is we're doing. All right. Well, he wants to play knight g6, so that I guess we should say that much is clear. H3, now a very spicy moment. When we move the bishop, by the way, a simple move would have been maybe knight f4, and that's also a little bit positional understanding, because I know that if he takes, my pawn on f4 is kind of annoying and I have some play. Queen f6, though, much better. In any case, H3, now a very spicy moment. We don't want to take, because then this knight will come, and that's exactly where it wants to be. So then there's the question, if I move the bishop, then I have to wonder about knight g5. Okay, so this is the way it went down. Bishop e6. Now, Andrew thinks for a minute and a half, and it looks like black has blundered. And so this is going to be an example I'm going to use of calculation. Okay, it looks like black has blundered, and it looks like knight g5 is the problem, because knight g5, and if we take this thing, I'm sure Andrew saw this thing. Now, it looks bad. If this is a problem, then black maybe should have played bishop d7 so that that knight e6 trick wouldn't have been available. But here's where it gets really spicy. It wasn't even true. It was all a ruse, because knight g3, let's say knight e6, pawn takes in. Oh no, this guy's hanging. So in fact, white is going to lose this one. Rough, right? Rough. That's an example of calculation, right? Black did think about it, but that visualization of FE didn't occur to black. Now, I want to stress, for a stronger player, once we get up to this level, right, it might be easy to see which pieces attack which. But for anybody, myself included, it's going to take a moment for me to digest this position. It's going to involve some system too, thinking, at least some time on the clock. And black should really think about it, because when the move played, now he has a very bad position. Oddly, he sees here that the rook is out, but now notice our fianchetto knight on g7 is poor. White is now winning. Okay, knight e3, knight g6, d4, bishop b6, kind of interesting. I'm okay with this. Queen g4, and now a mistake that ultimately has to do with time, development. This piece is attacked. We have to develop our queen. Later on, he's going to play queen g5. It makes a lot of sense to play queen f6. So something I want to stress here is the game, the computer might say that white is winning. It's probably true, but we still have a lot of kick left. We're not ready to resign. White's not going to play a perfect game either. But we have to bring our guys out. And so when we think about the category of development, it really was a5 and queen and king h7 here, which were no bueno. Great move. Simple and strong. Simple and strong. Beautiful stuff. Okay, now he goes queen g5. And I still would like queen f6. It's a hard road though, either way, because now maybe queen e7 even, because you got to prevent the rook coming to d7. So now we get this endgame. Good move. We get the rook penetration. And now again, we don't want to resign. We don't want to resign. This move feels a lot like resignation, because maybe like king here, and maybe we'll get some knight h5, some rook f7. It's a bad business, there's no doubt about it, but we would have more chance to fight. Now we have to spend another tempo on a move like c5. Simple chess. Good. Simple. f3, simple. And here I would have preferred knight f4. I think he saw g3 and was scared of it, but honestly, if we play passively, there's no chance anyway, right? He's just gonna go mop up all of our business. So here we go, it gets all mopped up, and the game is over. They played it out a little bit, but we don't have to follow it anymore from here. So, couple takeaways from this game that I want to leave you with. As you saw, there wasn't a lot of hanging of pieces. There was the problem of development. There was not the problem in terms of the clock. Both players played pretty well. Actually, I want to bring it back to the time graph just for a second. What we do see though, all right, and this is very critical for all players at this level, is when they get to the end game, all right, you can see they stopped kind of thinking. And I want to stress, even though it's technically lost, stronger players will spend time trying to create some kind of drama for their opponent, right? To make it hard in some way, right? There's a certain kind of tenacity that you can expect from a stronger opponent. Okay, and also what we sometimes see often is that people at this level don't really annotate the end game. So you see that's just out of that they're done over here. All right, the next was we saw a key calculation question. Did it decide the game? Well, it definitely had a big effect on it, right? So in contrast to the earlier cohorts where it's somebody just hanging a piece, now we're gonna get some calculation things. And surprisingly, we're not even at 1200 yet, but these players are having games decided on some calculation that goes a couple ply deep. And to my mind, it also speaks like, oh, chess is a little bit competitive. At 1200, a lot of people think those people can't play. No, these are some good players. This is the 90th percentile of all chess.com players. All right, so there it is, 1200, a very important milestone in my head. It marks the transition from people just hanging pieces to the more wonderful and beautiful world of chess where other factors come into play. Positional understanding, calculation, the whole wonder of the game starts to open up. All right, bye-bye.